When this story begins, our heroine, Elizabeth Ann, was a 9-year-old little girl who lived with her great-aunt Harriet in a medium-sized city. That's all you need to know about that place, because it's not important in the story. Elizabeth Ann's great-aunt Harriet was a widow who was not very rich or very poor, and she had one daughter, Frances, who gave piano lessons to little girls. They kept a girl whose name was Grace, and who had asthma dreadfully, and wasn't very much of a girl at all, being nearer 50 than 40. Tender-hearted Aunt Harriet kept her because she couldn't get any other place on account of her coughing. So you could hear her all over the house. Now you know the names of all the household, and this is how they looked. Aunt Harriet was very small and thin and old. Grace was very small and thin and middle-aged. Aunt Frances, although she was really, of course, a first cousin once removed, was small and thin. And Elizabeth Ann was very small and thin and little, and yet they had plenty to eat. I wonder what was the matter with them. You heard how Aunt Harriet kept Grace, even though she was a depressing person. Elizabeth Ann's father and mother both died when she was a baby. Aunt Harriet quickly took her in to keep her from the dreaded Putney cousins.
Anything but the Putneys. They lack sympathy, such indifference to the sacred sensitiveness of child life. I shall never forget it. The children had chores to do, as though they were hired men. We must not let Elizabeth Ann go to the Putneys.
As Elizabeth Ann grew, she didn't know what chores were, but she understood from Aunt Harriet that the Putneys were very, very dreadful. She and Aunt Frances were inseparable. Aunt Frances shared in all Elizabeth Ann's doings and even her thoughts. She felt that the trouble with most children is that they are not understood, and she was determined that she would understand Elizabeth Ann. She also loved the little girl with all her heart, and longed, above everything in the world, to protect her from all harm, and to keep her happy and strong and well. And yet Elizabeth Ann was neither very strong nor well. And as for being happy, you can judge for yourself when you have heard all of this story. Aunt Frances was afraid of a great many things herself. She was always quick to assure the little girl whenever there was anything to fear.
There, dear. I'm sure that's a nice doggy. I'm sure. I don't believe he ever bites little girls. Oh, mercy. Go away, sir. Go away.
Whenever there was any thunder or lightning, Aunt Frances would drop everything to run to Elizabeth Ann. At 9:15 every weekday morning, Aunt Frances dropped whatever she was doing and protecting led Elizabeth Ann through the streets to the big brick school building. You can imagine the noise on the playground just before school. Elizabeth Ann shrank from it and clung tightly to Aunt Frances. Aunt Frances would sit and listen to all the dreadful tales of Elizabeth Ann's, and they would cry. Once they cried so much, neither could eat. So Frances phoned the doctor.
There is nothing wrong with that child.
But doctor, she hasn't gained a pound in 3 months. And her sleep, and her appetite, and her nerves.
More beefsteak, plenty of fresh air, and more sleep. She will be all right.
Just then, something happened that changed Elizabeth Ann's life forever. Harriet coughed.
What was that?
Oh, it's nothing. Just a small cough. That sore spot on my lungs won't go away.
Take the child away and then come back here yourself.
All right, doctor.
Aunt Harriet was really sick and must go at once to a warmer climate. Elizabeth Ann and Grace could not go. Grace went to live with her bachelor brother and help run his grocery store. Elizabeth Ann went to the Lathrops.
Do not bring that child here, Molly. Bridget has scarlet fever. Send her to the Putneys.
And just like that, Elizabeth Ann was being sent straight to the one place where there were no good times at all. Aunt Harriet had said so ever so many times. Poor Elizabeth Ann.
Inspired by the novel Understood Betsy by Dorothy Canfield. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos.